It is a blaster that's on the tip of everybody's tongue. Mark 13. What is it exactly? It has been kept secret for a while. But since there's other people working on very similar blasters, such as Carlos Cuba and his Striker, that this blaster inspired, I would like to today introduce it and show it off. What is it? How is it modded? What's the concept of it? How is it different from a normal NP or Striker? How are they the same and able to be used on both blasters? And most importantly, how much does it fire? This is the Mark 1318. It is basically 13, meaning Mark 13 meaning no flesh shall be spared, and 18 meaning 18 inches of barrel length. And as you can see, it is no slouch. So I was thinking really long and hard, how am I going to introduce this blaster? And I figured the best way to do it, like most modded blasters, just take it apart and show it its guts. These are fiberglass. Right now I have 4 layers of fiberglass. You'll notice there's a lot of, when I take this apart, there's a lot of fiberglass intervention. It looks like a stripe almost, doesn't it? Like an orange stripe, which is kind of cool looking. So basically, I started this blaster a few months ago, and I was going to keep it secret. And then some guy, how it became public is some guy was making an XPT mod to get over 200 feet per second with a standard draw, and I had a private group which was my Mark 1318 group that Carlos Cuba's in, Alan Turbino's in, Rex Graham's in, and Trip Miller's in, and they're like, yeah, you're gonna have to show them. I'm like, crud. I wanted to keep this blaster secret until we started warring again. Well, that's okay though, all good things come. I'm going to tell you what really, I had this concept since the NP was sell. Let me pull out a Striker and show you. Ooh, my back just fell off. I saw that dead prime that came on every one of these blasters that were to come. And I said, why can't it be an XPT? I don't understand why it can't be an XPT. You would just basically make that PT, that whole thing, put the pusher there. If you could figure out how to get this on into the PT to dive it in, the rest is history. You can make that plunger tube as long as you can, as long as my draw system will have. Look at all that space there. These 2 lines represent how long it is now. The newer version called the 20, Mark 1320, is going to be all the way back here, all the way where you can possibly prime it back. But you can see that's how much you have. And normally you only have between, I would say, about here to about here. And this one, yeah, from here to about here. And this one, you've got the whole thing. It gives you a whole nother inch and a quarter of prime. That means inch and a quarter there. And it also gives you a real pusher cup rather than an insert like you do on most of your Retaliator mods. So I decided, okay, Worker didn't send me a Swift. Big mistake. Because now I'm going to make a Swift Killer. That's right. And Swift Killer it is. Put in mind, it is using a number 62 Hillman plus a coil. But at that length, it is actually less than 14 kilograms. It's actually about 13 and a half according to Axis Spring. And the thing is that, let me take this off here and show you. It has that much pre-compression to it. So you can see this little coil hanging out here and it's still sitting there. Imagine that I've got this much pre-comp. I got 3 inches of pre-comp, which means that at draw it's got about 7-8 kilograms, at the end it's 13 and a half. But that makes the torque curve more even. And that's another thing I wanted to play with, was a blaster that was under 14 kilograms. The torque curve was more even, but it had this XPT. I had this XPT idea probably since last November. Yeah, and I actually have private video on my channel that I have not shared to anybody, but I shared to an associate over at FFW. I said, hey, here, I want to get this done, but of course, I'm not very hot on 3D printed stuff, and I was like, I could make this 3D printed and then put a piece of half-inch stainless steel to go into brass and make it integrated a lot like my Chronomag or my Mausifier. But I decided, no, there's another way of doing it. And quite frankly, I'm not close to warring yet. I'm not going to do it. So the plans for this are all the way from when the NP came out. And I just now got it done. Because, well, I didn't see any point in really letting it sit around for all this time. But now I'm getting closer to games. We're getting closer to the end of the pandemic. We're in this fourth wave. Hopefully we won't have a fifth. But I don't think so. I think once we get into the nitty-gritty, once I think this winter will go around. I put this in to tighten up the grip a bit. A little bit of duct tape right there. That does help. Putting it right there. It tends to grab this little thing here, and it keeps it from flexing. And I figured, okay, now's the time. Let's go build it. So the beginning, I think it was the very beginning of, end of May, beginning of June, I started building this thing. I had some double thick brass that I had left. So that's not a normal 17/32. That's actually 9/16 and 505 interior diameter brass. The same I use as the Pro. So it's a little bit more, you can hear that clink clink? Yeah, solid. And has a solid feel. Now, it's not by any means done. I am going to put some stainless steel or some 6061 aluminum around that, and then probably seal it up with epoxy like the Swan barrels. But for right now, kicking the old peanut around, waxing the barrel and everything else, getting it ready, I'm pretty much leaving it where it is. So here's what I'm going to do. I am going to take apart this blaster and show you the internals on it and tell you what I did. And that's the biggest thing. And I really wanted to make a blaster that was like a Swift, was like a Saber M20, but built on a small platform. That a Saber's really big, Delrin, solid, very good shooter. But I like blasters that are smaller and thinner, smaller formats. And one thing I like about these is look how small this is, the profile is, everything. Yeah. However, there are a lot of people that would go with bigger blasters. A Saber M20 is a great blaster. A Swift is a pretty good blaster. They just didn't send me one. Big mistake. You're going to hear that quote a lot in this video. Big mistake, worker. Big mistake. You could have used things over with Cartaya, but no, he had to make a Swift killer. Sorry. Yeah. And Swift killer it is. I'm not even using like a K27 or using one of their 1.6 springs or what rumored to come out 1.8 springs even. If I were to throw that in this thing, there's a good chance of me beating Big Blue. Another thing is I really thought when I saw this, hey, I can use a huge plunger tube. I could possibly beat Big Blue with this. Hey, imagine that. Imagine I have actually beat Big Blue with a blaster like this. Wow, like a blaster modeled after a Retaliator. Hey, that's pretty bitchin'. You know, so that was the kind of allure. But like many of my good mods, lots of planning, lots of revisions, and lots of trial and error testing, which I don't even have a field here right now to actually play field, meaning people to play with, to actually test. Okay, so there it is. There is the mod, and I made sure that I was in a really good high resolution mode to show this. Okay, so I did grind this so that I don't have a trigger lock. I grinded it right here. Okay, the top carries off of here. Here's your barrel right here. Now how this is built is it's basically inserted into here. It's wrapped around with duct tape, and then I'm using some silicone glue. This makes it so I can take out the barrel anytime I want, because I wanted this thing to be cast in epoxy. So basically this doesn't move. This is cast in epoxy. It's going to get another thing of epoxy. You can see I left a little bit of clearance to put a barrel in and cast that in epoxy by cross-drilling that and doing it. So much like I do the Chronomag. Okay, so this is not done right here, but I'm still playing around with the barrel a bit. You'll notice the priming bar, it's exactly the same, except for the fact that it's filed off right here. And that's so it can go into that mother right there. Oh, man. Okay. But what took the most work on this blaster, by far, was the pusher. It's a standard catch, even standard spring on the catch. I mean, it's actually a pretty light draw. It's relatively light. Probably lighter than your Turf, 16 Nexus. Definitely lighter than a BT27 by far. I mean, if I put some real weight, and you just saw that thing do 320 plus feet per second. If I put some more weight on this, it'd be really crazy. The main thing is I'm trying to win with pre-compression, thus a smoother prime and pre-compression. Now let's look at this back bar again. I've got about 13 coils of number 62 Hillman that I have flatly ground here. That goes, let me get this out of here, flatly ground here. And what this does is I turn them so they go like this. So you see at the beginning how it joins into the brass but barely. But when you're putting pressure under it, when you're putting it in the blaster, it's going to be more like that. Right. So this never bounces out, and I don't have the problem of the coils hopping over, because I'm using a 1/2-inch piece of brass there to put these in. So this is just a number 62 Hillman. You get Ace Hardware, True Value. I got this at True Value actually, and I bought a lot of these. And this is just your standard catch, with the exception of I have a guide rail right here. So I used a 1/2-inch piece of brass, but a guide there. As a matter of fact, I may want to trim that. This duct tape is not being my friend. But this, how did I get the bigger size of the 1/2-inch standpipe? How did I do it? Well, real simple. I wrapped this with inside with Teflon tape until such time I got the thickness I wanted. And then after that, I did that too. I did that for the pusher cup as well. We'll get to this. This is the most complicated part. I put 2 mounts here, one to seat this into here, which I cut this hole on both sides, and one to sit it there. And what this does is, I mean, look at how much air that is. 36.4 millimeters ID. Totally smooth brass surface. I absolutely love silicone grease. This is the same formula, the same kind of tube I use in Big Blue. And that's why Big Blue is a record-setting long shot. You can do 435 feet per second with 28 kilograms. But this one, we're not talking 28 kilograms. We're just talking 14 kilograms. And it's made mainly to be more for battle, not breaking records. Plus, record-breaking blasters, they tend to just sit in your guitar case and do nothing. I like blasters more useful. So, let's get this firing system out. And I left the magazine in here. I shouldn't have. Let's take this off right here. And you'll notice, it's just a standard pusher. All the parts are standard except for the ones I modded. There's not really a lot of, like, not one aftermarket part except for the Enduro at the end. That's it. And I picked that because I'm going with a lesser impact design. A design that isn't as high pressure and instant, such as, let's say, Big Blue with an 18.5K or the Vertebrae or a Chronomag. You'll notice that the fit on here is very tight. It does make priming a little harder, but what it does is it makes for a much better fit in your mag. There it is. So, I'm going to take this out. This is where I did the most work. About 80% of the work was done on this one part. I'm kidding you not. This is a piece of fiberglass, 3 wraps around, 10 on the top here, like 10 layers, and it makes a carryover that goes into here that is put in a cup that is cast epoxy. That's right, cast epoxy. And what that does, let me get a better view of it. And what that does is it makes it so I am anchoring this into this cup. This cup was actually off an Aeon Pro. It's laminated into the back, which goes into a funnel of 7/16 brass. And then through that, there's a little empty area here where I don't need it, but where I put in a pusher ring and 2 cutaways, I got a 10 millimeter ID piece of brass, 7/16. Look at that. Look at that. I don't take this apart because, yeah, it's better to keep it together. It makes it easier to put together. But this is all epoxy, fiberglass, primed with crazy glue, so that this is never going to break. This is stronger than chromoly steel. I mean, that is really strong. And then I have it so the carryover goes into this. Now, here's the thing I want to tell you about this part. If it's lubricated and if this top part stays tight, it'll be fine. And if it also doesn't bend. What I noticed about this, because they made this so thin, let's say a long shot plunger where you would put like a normal pump action on a long shot, you would have all this plastic below it, everything else. This one you don't, you only got this. It makes for a thinner cross section. So you need to strengthen these. You can use, I would love it if they would have put provisions for metal Pictionary rails on there. And you had a metal Pictionary rail running all the way across that. That'd be kind of cool, because that would make the whole thing solid. I also put these 4 layers all the way back. So this is epoxy and fiberglass. Fiber tape above it that puts the Mark 13. My normal corny shop writing, but that's typical legendary Chris Cartaya, you know, no show and all go. And that's how I am. Why? It's just my style. Just me. You can always tell the Cartaya blaster because you can always see the fiber tape and the fiberglass and everything else. And this part is holding up extremely well. 3 layers of fiberglass here, capping off the whole thing. And it is solid as a brick shit house. It is great. Okay? And then I can just put it in like so. Nice thing is I can swap this between blasters so I have this clearance here. And I can just take this right here and I can put it in. Now I have been thinking about other things. Could I make this threaded? Could I make this, because if somebody takes this apart and they have to put a dab of go-to glue and then put it back in and let it dry and center, some people may go, Chris, how do I take that apart? Chris, how do I do it? Well, my blasters are typically not for resale. That's one reason why my blasters are for resale for the most part, is they do take a lot of work in research and design. And every one of them I make is a little more personal. To have a true out Cartaya blaster, well, that's a feat. And if you do have one, it means I had a little bit of confidence in you to begin with. And what I saw with a lot of people, although I never had one complaint that my blasters suck or were bad or, you know, this was a terrible blaster, I had one person that was 1 day late and gave me a 1 star for being 1 day late, getting a 214 foot per second pink crush for her daughter. Oh, go figure, you know? I mean, yeah, it happens. Got 1 star for the greatest pink crush I ever built. Yeah. Customers can be that way. They can be shit. But what can you do, okay? I don't do a lot of commission work, and the reason is, as my stuff is very hand-tailored, very expressly made, you're talking about, instead of 3D printing or kits, someone who basically fine-tunes things like a race car, like a Formula 1 car, or maybe Ferrari would, a new prototype SS90 Stradale, or maybe an 812 competition lines. This is not everyday hobby store kid stuff. This is a Cartaya blaster. And yes, it functions the same. Yes, it works the same. Yes, it fires the same. Sure. That's where it pretty much ends. Because to work on these, you have to know fiberglass and glues and composites and everything else, as well as I do. Somebody in the level of modding, of doing stuff very different, revolutionary, and quite frankly not giving a shit what everybody else thinks. Maybe somebody like Boobtendo. Yeah, there's a guy who knows how to work with fiberglass. I'd be confident if he had one of my blasters, he would know what he's doing. Maybe somebody like Hang from Explorer. Maybe somebody like Alex Kong. Maybe somebody like Diane Jungi. Yeah, they do alright. Maybe somebody like Conrad from Saber. Yeah, they would do great. Oh man, gotta get this ring. There we go. It's a very tight silicone ring. You'll also notice my blasters that the prime is not so easy because, well, I'm trying to get them to have the tightest seal possible. I'm not really as concerned about the travel of the blaster. I am much more concerned about like it being smooth. I'm much more concerned with it holding air and keeping consistent velocities. And yes, a person could go through and fine-tune that stuff. That's great and dandy. I'm a person who likes tight cap springs. I'm a person who likes tight seals. I like to feel that tightness. But for a guy that can bench 220, can pretty much choke slam a guy who's 160 with one hand. I'm not bragging, I really can. Could take an elbow on solid pavement. A little bit tighter seal is nothing big, but you may want to loosen that up. You may want to get like a looser seal. Now, there's 2 ways to go about it. You can do what I did with Teflon tape, just use the same kind of seals except for that silicone seal, because I like silicone seals for the pusher cups. But I like NBR for those seals. Personal stuff. That's just personal trait. But you can also get a seal that is about 3 millimeters rather than 2.5 millimeters. And then, okay, there you go. So basically that's it. That is how it works right there. This, between here and here, is 100 cc's of air. that goes through 18 inches of barrel. And it is fairly accurate and fairly powerful. I love it. For the light yield that it has, and this spring, I mean, you know, a 62 Hillman at 15 coils is around 18 kilograms. At 52 coils, it's like 13.5. And the reason is, more of these coils soak up more of your total yield at full prime, because you're dividing over more coils. You're dividing the force over more coils. But you're also putting more force for a sustained amount of time. And that's how a lot of these blasters, like the Swift, the M20, the Caliber, and that's how they work. That's how the Nick did things. I'm always doing stuff very short prime, high power, high impact. And this is the first real blaster where I really went long draw, and longer than a long shot, and built the power gradually and the pressure gradually. So let's put this back together and do our final outro. But this is pretty much it. If you have any questions or comments, please Facebook me, ask me. I do endorse everybody being an XPT policy. People like Jacob Kelber of Mod Bros, people like Carlos Cuba, and many of my other friends that are going to make blasters like this that really, in this package, $50. This costs like $12, and I still have enough material for 2 other plunger tubes. The springs cost like $5. This barrel is expensive. It's about $26 because it's the double thick barrel, but you can use 70-30 seconds. And of course the fiberglass. That is the part that takes the longest. I gotta be honest. That's the part that takes the longest and takes the most effort. But at any rate, I love it. It's a great blaster. And I highly recommend it to anybody who really, really wants to go for the gold. Now, to the newsroom. Yeah, it's a pretty insane blaster. You know, I started with this design and decided, you know, why not use the why not use a pusher cup and use it so it's all the way back here, and so we don't have any dead prime and what have you. And I did, you know, I was thinking about doing it, and I started to do it when I thought, honestly, we were going to be out of this pandemic. And now we're in the 4th wave and what have you, but it's just so much power and so little prime. It's insane. Very accurate. Just insane. I love this thing. This thing is, oof. And can you imagine how many rounds I have left in here? Hold on a second. I don't have any. Oh, just when I want to do a rapid fire demonstration and I don't have any left. Okay, well, let's pick up these little Game Face Pro darts. So it's got the power, the 300+ feet per second power, and the 14 kilogram prime method. I can do this. That is really cool. I mean, that is long shot power with less prime, a longer barrel, more efficiency, and it's smoother. And this is why a Mark 13, named after the movie Hardware, no flesh shall be spared. This is where I came up with the idea for it. This is like a big, thick thing we're looking at here, this long shot. And then it's just, I mean, really, it's small. I remember comparing Big Blue to an HK Model 91 and saying, you know, I wish blasters were more the size of a Model 91. And now Adventure Force and Darzone have made blasters that are more the size of a Model 91. Hector and Koch, or a Mini 14 or something like that, and it's really great. And oh, I just can't wait to go in the field with this thing. I may keep this stock here, maybe put a buffer there, maybe. But also I like that when you're not holding it like this, you're holding it like this, so that you're absorbing the vibration to get the best shot at 200 feet, because you do need to do that. And is this a blast that hit 200 feet? Oh yes, I have range tests at 225 feet, 230 feet range with this. It is pretty hairy. It doesn't like AF Pro darts as much as it likes the Pack Ds, but that's usually what I use anyway. I think the community is going more towards longer prime and smoother rather than harder and the long shot. People want blasters that don't have the bolt sets. People want blasters that, you know, aren't very proprietary or expensive. And to be honest with you, building a platform that's very common, like an NP or a Striker, it was also an idea, because, I mean, let's face it, Bird of Prey was a great blaster. It is still a great blaster. But it's not a very common platform, especially today. A Starshot? A girl's blaster? Who would build on a girl's blaster? What maniac would put a full barrel AT2K turret on a girl's blaster. What the hell good would that do? Well, it makes a nice portable sniper. That's what it does. But it's not very common. I think I got more to commonality when I did Chronomag, and I invented the Chronomag. And although I did it on a common platform with a Sharpfire, it was so much trouble that basically people waited until the SPAF was out, and they went with more of the Falcon Fire, which, by the way, made it a little easier because you can keep your rear body, and this was the 3D print add-on. As with this is a whole integrated hand-built mod that you really have to know what you're doing. And people such as Mod Bros and other people have actually done an actual Mauser fire, and they look really cool. I mean, once you build one, you can't replace it with the world, but this is something that I finally built on a common platform in a common way. Somebody could build those internals, drop it in a blaster, do a few cuts to the inside of shell, put this barrel in, and just rock and roll. As where a lot of my other stuff was just so hands-on that was impossible to do. I'm really impressed with the results. I really am. But before you get a Swift, and before you get any other blasters, think about this. If you are willing to do the sweat equity, and you're willing to do what me and Carlos Cuba are doing, I'm pretty sure other people will follow. And you can get that brass tube in there, and you're willing to go with the bigger rings and to make the pusher cup, either by 3D printing and gluing, or by what I did with fiberglass laminating that's never going to come apart. I highly recommend you consider this route, rather than going and buying something from Worker or buying something for somebody else, unless you really want a really solid sniper platform that has the metal rim, that has the Delrin, and you want the bigger size. Because a lot of snipers do. They want the weight behind them. And if that's more your ticket, you know, an M20, go talk to Conrad. You know, that $621 for an M20 America. That's not too bad, considering my first Explorer. Okay, that was, I think, $360 shipped, and he threw in just a few parts. And some of the other Explorer stuff now, it's in the thousands of dollars. You know, for something that's really machined, and it's machined parts and everything else. Well, this is more hand-built brass. I'm still using the normal catch and everything. That has its merits, but some people, like Bradley Phillips, like that. And like that more solid platform and the metal scars and, you know, like Spectre builds and all that. A lot of people like that too. And do put in mind, they are doing an auto kit for it, so you may want that as well. So I'm trying to be biased on all sides, but I call this a major Swift killer. I mean, and it is. Because you're going longer 32mm and longer spring versus fatter and a little less travel, but very, very manageable. So until next time, this is Chris Cartaya. See, don't you go changing, or I'll fucking find you. Oh, I just love this thing. Get off my lawn.